This is part 2 of a short series, a two-part series, about how to get your gecko used to you. So the first one is introducing yourself to your gecko, basically, before you introduce handling. And then this video is about handling. So if you are trying to handle your leopard gecko, I seriously recommend watching the first part, because that will make it so much easier once you start getting your gecko used to your behaviors and you get used to your gecko's behaviors. So I'll leave that in the description down below. Just scroll down, click on it, watch it, and then come back, and then when you're here, we're good to go. Where I left off with that one was introducing soft touches. So soft touches would be approaching your gecko and gently stroking its back with your finger. What it may do is it may arch its back like a cat, and in that instance, if it doesn't run away, that's a good sign. If it like gets really jumpy and runs away, then that means it doesn't want your touch. But if it arches its back a bit, it's just responding to your touch, and that's not a bad thing. I would not recommend touching its tail or touching its legs, as that would make it very jumpy. Those are not like areas it wants to be touched. And if you touch its head, that's generally okay. Like, you can pet the top of their head, but a lot of people who are new to leopard geckos are apprehensive about like being bitten, perhaps, especially if it's like a juvenile and their behavior is kind of flighty. So I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're not comfortable, but if you are comfortable, then you can try it out and see how your gecko responds. Again, if it flinches or jumps away, pull your hand back because it doesn't want to be touched. In the times where your gecko may be jumpy if you soft touch, then what you can do is leave your hand in the enclosure and let it approach you again, and if it does, that's a great sign, and try it again. And if your gecko doesn't approach, you can just leave your hand in the enclosure for a couple more minutes, let them know that you don't mean any harm, and then after a few minutes you can leave. After soft touches, what you're going to want to do is start the step-up handling method. The step-up method is where you take your hand and you move it right towards your leopard gecko, right where its front legs are, and encourage it to step up. So like press into its legs just a little bit and encourage it to step up. And if it steps up onto your hand, great. Keep moving your hand a little bit until its back legs step up too, and then you're literally handling your gecko. If your gecko does not want to step up and runs away, that's fine. Just keep trying the soft touch method until you get to this point. Some geckos just take a while to get used to the idea of being handled or being touched. That's okay. Every gecko is different. I must urge you not to be afraid to be bitten. I know that sounds silly because like generally you don't ever want to be bitten by your gecko, but if you're apprehensive and your hand is like shaky and you're making quick jumpy movements, your gecko is going to be jumpy as well. It's going to respond negatively to your feeling. So what you need to do is be calm and respectful in your approach to your gecko, and when you are, it will respond the same. Once you're in the phase of your gecko naturally steps up onto your hand, which by the way is much easier if you have a front opening enclosure. I said that in the last video, but I cannot encourage you enough to get a front opening enclosure. I used to keep my leopard geckos in 10 gallons back when I only had 2 leopard geckos, a long time ago now, 3 years actually. But I hated it. It's not enough space, it's really hard to get into, and I hated the fact that it opened from above. A front opening enclosure such as the gecko bookshelves, which are my own design by the way, if you're interested, I'll include a link below. But the front opening enclosures, if you use an Exoterra, if you use a Zoom Ed, if you build something of your own, are incredible because your gecko can see you coming, so it makes the whole handling process a million times easier. Anyways, off of that topic. Once you're in the step-up stage where you can just slide your hand and your gecko steps up onto it, that's fantastic. And you can start moving your hand around so that your gecko gets used to the idea that you're going to be lifting it out of the enclosure or pulling it out of the enclosure. And when that's happening, then you can start sitting down with it in a room that has a little confined area, because you don't want your gecko to run away because you're not used to snatching it up. So if it starts making like a daring move, you're going to be in trouble because you're not used to picking it up yet. So what you want to do is sit down in a confined space with your gecko, have it in your hand, let it walk on your legs, let it enjoy the area around you, let it explore, give it some great enriching out of its enclosure time, and at the same time it's good for you because you can learn how your gecko behaves out of the enclosure and around you. And if your gecko is generally calm at these times, fantastic. That's what you want. You want a calm gecko because then you'll be able to slide your hand under it even when it's out of its enclosure and then put it back when you're done hanging out with it. But you want to make sure 100% that you're in a confined area and you're not just like standing up flinging the gecko around, because if you're not sitting down, you may drop the gecko and that can kill it. If it doesn't kill it or injure it, obviously you got lucky, but the problem is it will probably put you back a few steps in terms of handling because it'll be afraid all over again. So you need to make sure that if you are new to handling leopard geckos or new to handling reptiles in general, or your leopard gecko is new to being handled, especially all three of those combined. I get a lot of questions from people who are first-time leopard gecko owners with a juvenile from a pet store. It's like nightmare fuel, all of it added together. It's like it's gonna take a while for your gecko to get used to you. So what you can do is sit in a confined area, sit with it, don't stand with it, and let it walk on your legs. You know, don't put it up somewhere high where you can't reach it, where it'll freak out if you gotta snatch it. Just let it, you know, be calm and a nice little explorative environment on your lap or on like the small space around you. After so many times of using the like slide your hand under and it crawls on top of your hand method, and you know, after soft touching and after allowing it to be out of the enclosure, it will be generally used to you handling it. And if you approach your gecko and just, you know, scoop it up gently, don't like snatch it, just like scoop it up like this, it'll probably be completely fine with that. And then that means you are finally at the point where you have got your gecko used to you, got your gecko used to handling, and the rest is history. Now, there are some times where you'll need to handle your gecko in a way that's not fun. So if it gets stuck shed, if you have to administer medication, those times are not fun. Oh, if you have to remove a sperm plug, that ain't fun. But in those times, handling your gecko and having it used to being handled really comes handy, because you need to actually, you know, move your gecko in uncomfortable positions. And if you're feeling like a nervous Nelly because you're not used to handling your gecko and your gecko isn't used to being handled, it's a recipe for a disaster in which you may get bit by your gecko, or it may just cause severe stress for both you and your gecko. Handling isn't just about enrichment. You need to have your gecko capable of being handled, at least in situations where it's completely necessary, like taking it to the vet, for example. You need to handle it to put it into something to take it to the vet, or to administer medication, like I said, or to remove a sperm plug, or to remove stuck shed, or to just give it a regular physical check to make sure that everything looks well. So handling your gecko is absolutely an essential part of owning your gecko. Now, some geckos don't prefer to be handled, and so I leave those geckos alone most of the time. I'll only handle them maybe a couple times a month just to give them like a real good look around and also a little bit of enrichment. But some geckos naturally do not like being handled and others love it. So it really does depend on your individual gecko. I don't encourage you to like go to the extremes with handling geckos that don't like it. Like, don't have it out every single day. If your gecko just doesn't like it, it doesn't like it. And there are geckos that are like that, like I said. I wouldn't go out of your way to make it uncomfortable. Instead, I would just focus on, if you have more than one gecko, the gecko that enjoys being handled more. One thing that you can do if you want to get a gecko that you think will be more handleable is avoid juveniles and avoid pet stores and avoid mass breeders. Try and find a hobbyist breeder who has handled the gecko, and try and find a gecko that might be a little bit bigger than a juvenile. It doesn't have to be full grown yet, but juveniles that are like little tiny things, they're, you know, afraid of being squished and killed and eaten, and that's completely natural because they are animals and they, you know, they want to survive. So I would really recommend finding a hobbyist breeder that can send you photos of your gecko being handled. I actually just got a juvenile recently. Her name is Egret. She's amazing, and she's super handleable, super calm, and that's because the person I got her from handled her from the point that she was born all the way up until she came to me. So if you haven't gotten your gecko yet and you want to try and, you know, find the best situation in terms of a well-behaved gecko, hobbyist breeder 100%. I also want to say that when it comes to male versus female leopard geckos, that females are a little bit more jumpy. So if you are looking for a gecko that's a bit more explorative and fun to handle, and when you take it out of its enclosure it'll do a lot of exploring, typically that'd be a female gecko. But male geckos are a little bit more calmer. They can be a little bit more skittish, but generally speaking, they're just like little fat happy dudes that will just sit with you. Some male geckos are a little bit more wild, like my Benjamin and my Merlin, for example, but most of them are pretty calm. So whichever behavior you're looking for, whether it be a little bit calm on the male side or a little bit wild on the female side, keep that in mind when you're choosing. I can include a few clips of me handling some of my geckos. I'll include a finicky gecko, I'll include a really friendly gecko, and I will include Egret, my juvenile gecko, just to show you how calm she really is. So to help show you guys exactly how I handle my leopard geckos, I have used a number of my geckos as examples. This is Egret, and as you can see, she is a very calm juvenile, like literally so calm. I can just pick her right up with the scoop method. Literally didn't take any time at all, and like I said, that is because I got her from a hobbyist breeder who had been handling her since she hatched right out of the egg. As you can also see, I am keeping her on my leg on the ground so that if she does happen to get flighty, she is not going to fall and hurt herself. Now we're going to move on to Mira, who looks like a juvenile, but she's not. She actually has stunted growth. And in the background, I'm watching American Horror Story, and there's paint on my pants. Please ignore both of those. Now, Mira is pretty easygoing, but as you can see, she's not super fond of like being petted on the back. It does make her a little active. But if you do the treadmill method where you continue to move your hand so that she continues to have a surface to walk on, it works really well with her. She's a really great gecko. She's never been really flighty or tried to bite me, but as you'll see here in a second, when I touch her back, she does move a little bit. And by move, I mean she kind of just like sinks down further. See it right there. Yeah, you can see where she kind of like bent her body a little bit and sunk down. And here's how she reacts to being scooped up. It's much easier for her than being petted on the back, and I don't know why. Next, I want to move on to Fritz because he really does not like being touched. See how negatively he responds to it? He does not like it at all. He doesn't really mind it so much like if you handle him, but touching him he does not like. See, as you can see there, yeah, he's over it. I'm not going to bother him anymore. I also included Renly because I've had her and Fritz for about the exact same amount of time, and the difference in their behavior and the way they like to be handled is just, it's night and day, so I absolutely wanted to show both of them. But as you can see, Renly doesn't care about being petted, Renly doesn't care about being picked up. She's a very personable gecko. I can touch her pretty much anywhere, on her head, on her face, and she doesn't have any reaction at all. So here in a second, you're going to see me pick her up, and her little nails get caught on my pants, so she flails a little bit, but as you can see, she was very calm on the landing and even the pet after. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found this informational and insightful. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and I'd also love if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell. We'd love to have you. We are getting close to 5,000 subscribers, and that would be incredible to hit, so please join us. And also check the links below for social media, a Patreon, a donation link, a merchandise link, a contact email, all kinds of stuff. That's all for this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye!